Could an increase in Canada's immigration be one of the factors in keeping inflation higher? Let's find out in today's episode. Hello and welcome to My Consultant, where we give you latest updates about Canada immigration. We are starting today's episode with pre-arrival changes for Sudanese, followed by latest International Experience Canada draw, and Quebec universities opposing federal government's idea of limiting the number of international students. Next, I will discuss is Canada's high immigration targets affecting its inflation, and Tashina will disclose Canada's next plan to modernize study visa program. This episode of My Consultant is brought to you by Scotiabank.
Individuals from Sudan who received a negative final decision from the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada or the Federal Court, or received a final PRRA decision from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada between August 23rd, 2022 to August 22nd, 2023 may now be eligible to apply for a pre-removal risk assessment. Due to the worsening conditions in Sudan that could put individuals at risk if they return, Canada believes that PRRA could use some mending. The Canada Border Services Agency is now advising eligible individuals from Sudan that they can now apply for a PRRA if they are currently subject to an enforceable removal order. This means, depending on when they receive their negative final decision on their refugee claim, individuals from Sudan will be exempt from the 12-month hold on applying for PRRA. Typically, if someone's refugee claim or previous PRR application is rejected, withdrawn, or abandoned, or if their application for leave and judicial review is dismissed by the federal court, you'd have to wait 12 months before you are eligible to apply for PRRA. Please be advised that applying for PRRA does not guarantee its outcome. An IRCC officer will make the final decision on each case individually, based on the information provided. So be sure to keep your PRRA application up to date and inform the IRCC of any changes to your application.
The new International Experience Canada, that is IEC, round of invitations sent out 996 work permit invites on August 25, 2023. The International Experience Canada 2023 processing time has now improved by 2 weeks to 9 weeks, as per the recent IRCC processing update. The International Experience Canada has 3 categories: Working Holiday Visa category, the Young Professionals category, and International Co-op category.
The housing shortage in Canada has remained a fearful concern for many Canadians. No real solution has been made from the federal government, but a recent suggestion from Canada's previous Immigration Minister, Sean Fraser, has received some major pushback. Recently, on August 21st, Sean Fraser, the new federal housing minister, suggested that capping the explosive growth in the number of international students recruited to Canada in recent years was an option to reduce the demand for housing, implying that capping the number of international study permits Canada issues is a way to ease the country's housing shortage. Quebec University administrators, professors, and students stand against this idea, believing that limiting the amount of international students will do little to address the country's housing crisis, but in turn will hurt university research and deprive Quebec of skilled immigrants. Mark Miller, who who took over as the new immigration minister for Canada, says the concern around the skyrocketing number of international students entering Canada is not just about housing, but Canadians' confidence in the integrity of the immigration system itself. Quebec's Premier François Legault and other ministers joined in opposing the housing minister's suggestion, reminding Ottawa, Canada's capital, that education is a provincial jurisdiction. Over the past decade, the number of international students in Quebec has doubled. As of December 2022, there were just under 59,000 international students in Quebec universities. It is estimated that there are more than 807,000 international students with study permits in Canada across all levels of education. Miller confirms that Canada is on track to host around 900,000 international students this year.
Could an increase in Canada's high immigration targets be one of the reasons behind high inflation and housing crisis? Let's find out. The housing crisis in Canada has reached a peak this year. A report released in June by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation shows that over 22 million housing units will be required by 2030 to help achieve housing affordability for everyone living in Canada. The shortage comes while Canada pursues its high level of immigration targets, causing concerns for both Canadians as well as newcomers. The fear is that the rapid population growth will increase the demand and lower the supply, and further raise prices to an extent where home ownership will be out of reach. A report by Environics Institute released in October 2022 showed that 15% of Canadians believe that immigrants are driving up home prices and making them unaffordable for others. However, a report by Royal Bank of Canada disagrees with this and says that the housing shortage can be attributed to a higher residential construction price. The report says that the price index has increased by 51% since the start of the pandemic in 2020. Prices are higher because of a shortage of skilled workers, a low supply of raw materials, and increased input cost. On July 12, 2023, the Bank of Canada, due to inflation, increased its interest rate to 5%, the highest since 2001. Recently, Canada's population surpassed 40 million people. According to Statistics Canada, 96% of this population growth was due to immigration. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem says that immigration is adding to both demand and supply, and Canada has fared better than most of the nations in terms of tackling inflation. Canada's new immigration minister, Mark Miller, agrees that immigration can act as a solution to Canada's most pressing issues, such as housing and high inflation.
Part of the strategy to modernize the international student program operated by Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, the IRCC is planning to implement a new trusted institution framework to its student visa program next year in 2024. Although specific details remain limited at this moment, according to reports, the general concept revolves around evaluating post-secondary institutions based on criteria that demonstrates their reliability as partners in areas such as sustainable intake, identification of genuine students, compliance monitoring and reporting, in addition to ensuring a safe and enriching experience for international students. The IRCC indicated that the trusted institutions may benefit from a more efficient and expedited processing time for their applications as long as they meet certain criteria. Currently, any Canadian institution admitting international students must be classified as a designated learning institution, a DLI, and be approved by the respective provincial or territorial government. International students are required to have an acceptance letter from a DLI to apply for a Canadian study permit. The new Trusted Institution Framework will establish a two-level structure among Canada's DLIs, with some being recognized as trusted institutions and others not. The Trusted Institution Framework will rely on two main categories of data. Some data will be pulled from the IRCC's own records and other Government of Canada sources. This includes study permit approval rates, country of origin, and post-graduation student outcomes, such as transition to postgraduate work permits and other IRCC programs. Lastly, DLIs will also be required to participate in a new reporting scheme, sharing additional data with the IRCC. The IRCC plans to refine its data collection survey and make it accessible to all DLIs in the fall of 2023. Data will be compiled and analyzed through spring 2024 to establish initial trusted institution designations. That is all for this week's episode of My Consultant. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to click the bell icon to subscribe to get notified for our latest episodes and posts. For more information on the topics covered in this week's episode, please visit myconsultant.ca, where you can contact an authorized immigration and citizenship consultant. I'm Tashina Thompson.
I am Tina Batra, and we'll see you next week.